and I'm very clear that there has to be a strong approach to maintaining our border, and that does mean saying to countries who do not take their citizens back that we're not simply going to allow our laws to remain unenforced, that they do have to play ball, they have to come to the table, and if cutting visas is one of the ways to do that, then I'll do whatever it takes.
Home Secretary, can you tell us what we're doing, what you're doing here today, what you're announcing, and also the Americans are here talking to you about Five Eyes. Have they restored intelligence to do with Ukraine? Because we understand they took that away.
Well, look, I have one top priority in my job as Home Secretary, and that is to secure our borders. And so today I've been talking to our Five Eyes partners about what more we can do to work together to make sure that our borders are secure and that our citizens feel safe. We think that there is interesting space for collaboration, particularly on how we deal with countries who do not take their citizens back. So making sure that we are able to return out of our countries people who have no right to be in our countries and send them back to their home country. So for the countries that do not play ball, we've been talking about how we can take much more coordinated action between the Five Eyes countries. And for us, that means including possibly the cutting of visas in the future, just to say, you know, we do expect countries to play ball, play by the rules, and if one of your citizens has no right to be in our country, you do need to take them back.
So cutting visas to countries that don't agree returns deals as Reform have proposed and as the Tories have proposed?
Well, this is a Labour government with Labour policy and Labour proposals. We've been looking at this for some time. It's been discussed already across the government, and I'm very clear that there has to be a strong approach to maintaining our border, and that does mean saying to countries who do not take their citizens back that we're not simply going to allow our laws to remain unenforced, that they do have to play ball, they have to come to the table, and if cutting visas is one of the ways to do that, then I'll do whatever it takes.
I want to come on to you as the new Home Secretary in just a moment, but before we do that, do you fancy the job of Deputy Leader of the Labour Party? Are you going to go for that?
Well, I'm the Home Secretary, so that is my job, and my top priority is securing our borders. I will not be running for Deputy Leader of the Labour Party.
So you are the new Home Secretary. I suppose what people want to know is, are we going to see a change of approach and policy, or just a sort of change of vibe? For instance, on small boats, do you think that the deal with the French, one in, one out, and the deal with the French to disrupt the boats going across the Channel, which may or may not get through the French Parliament if that dissolves later today, is enough? Or could we expect you to do more to stop the boats other than what your predecessor did?
Oh, well, look, I'm 3 days into the job. I have a very strong foundation to build on. Yvette Cooper, my predecessor, had real success in getting returns to 35,000. I think that was a real step change from the terrible inheritance we had from the previous Conservative government. And of course, she was able to strike that landmark deal with the French. That's an international binding treaty between us and the French government. And of course, it's not for us to comment on the domestic political affairs in France, but we will be looking to, of course, continue with the treaty that we have agreed. But that is a strong foundation for me to build on as the new Home Secretary. I will be looking to go further and faster because I am very clear I have one top priority in this job, and that is to secure the borders. I will do whatever it takes. And for those who've worked with me already in government and in my previous brief, I think people can tell I'm not the sort of person that hangs around.
I want to understand how you differ to your predecessor. For instance, there's been some very recent talk about digital ID cards being an answer for migration and people who come over here. Can you just sketch out your view of ID cards? Do you have a long-standing view? What is it? Could everybody expect to have a digital ID in future in order to, one of the reasons to be to tackle migration?
Well, look, my long-term personal political view has always been in favour of ID cards. In fact, I supported the last Labour government's introduction of ID cards. The first bill I spoke on in Parliament was the ID cards bill, which the then Conservative Lib Dem coalition scrapped. So I have a long-standing position, which anybody who's familiar with my...
Because it wasn't in the manifesto, was that a mistake?
Well, I have a long-standing position of my own, which those who are familiar with my political track record will know that is something that I've always supported. And look, my other colleagues in government have started this conversation about how we might roll out more digital ID. As Home Secretary, I'm very clear we do have to deal with the pull factors that are making the UK a destination of choice for those that are on the move around the world. And I want to make sure that we can clamp down on that. I think that a system of digital ID can also help with illegal working, enforcement of other laws as well. So there is a broader piece of work here to be done by government, but I do think that has a role to play for dealing with our migration system as well.
Forgive me, could we be in a situation where everybody would be compelled to have a digital ID at some point?
Well, the government's position at the moment is to look at digital ID, further rollout. I'll obviously be discussing that with my colleagues, some of whom are also, like me, new to the role, but we will be setting out our plans in the very near future about how we want to deal with the pull factors. The Prime Minister has also been clear. We have got to deal not just with disrupting the trade in people that is bringing people across the channel, but we've also got to deal with some of the reasons why they're getting in the boat in the first place, looking to come to the UK. And to our mind, digital ID has a role to play here.
Final area, we've read a lot of briefings in the newspaper about the European Convention of Human Rights and perhaps some shifting towards that. So I just wanted to understand your view. Clearly this government is likely to update guidance to judges, particularly around some of the key articles. But give me a sense of where you're coming from on this. If the revised, updated guidance to judges meant that some of the cases in the UK end up going to the Strasbourg court, and even they were uncomfortable and suggested that we were in breach of ECHR rules, would that be a big deal? Other countries don't seem to mind it, but we've always gone out of our way to stop that happening in the past. Do you have a new attitude to adverse rulings from Strasbourg?
Well, I used to be a lawyer, so fighting in court is used to be my background, and I've got no problem with us as a government fighting our case through the courts. We're very clear as a government that, as the Prime Minister has made clear, we won't be leaving the European Convention on Human Rights. That has other consequences that we think are not in our national interest, but we absolutely see the case for reform, primarily in our domestic legal framework, tightening up the rules. In the end, this is about how you strike the balance between human rights on the one hand and securing our borders. I do think that balance isn't in the right place at the moment. That's why we will come forward with changes to our domestic legislation and the guidance in terms of how we apply some of the convention rights legally here at home. And of course I want to have a conversation, as I started in my previous job, with international partners in Europe who are also looking for a new conversation about how we can make sure the convention itself is fit for purpose in the modern era. It is in the nature of these things that sometimes you have to slug it out in court, but I'll do whatever it takes to make sure we have the right legal framework and we can secure our borders.
But with respect, I remember David Cameron saying something incredibly similar. You want reform of the ECHR, you're going to get together with partners. Nothing happens. Why do you think your approach might be any different to that of Yvette Cooper or indeed a succession of Tory governments before that? Well,
I think firstly the debate in Europe is starting to change. Other countries are actually trying to have this conversation around reform of the convention. That's not been the case previously, where maybe Britain was seen as more of a lone operator, a little bit more isolated in trying to make that case. I was very struck when I visited the Council of Europe in Strasbourg just a couple of months or so ago, how much other people wanted to talk to me about Britain playing a leading role in that discussion around reform of the convention. I'm very happy to step into that space. I think that we can play a good role in moving those conversations along. So I think we're not isolated. Other countries are struggling with the challenges of mass migration, maintaining our borders, and I think that this is a useful time for us to have a refresh conversation, and I'm confident we can make more progress.
Finally, how would you sum up your approach to being Home Secretary?
I have one priority. I have to secure our borders, and I will do whatever it takes to get the job done.